Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, real quick before we get started on the show, I'm just going to talk about Treeline Academy. You've heard me say it. I can't even tell you how many times. Mark Livesay is treelineacademy.net. That's treelineacademy.net. Sign up. Use the promo code PC2020. Save yourself $20. Can't say it enough. It's awesome, amazing, most comprehensive e-scouting course out there. Check it out for yourself. Sign up. Use promo code PC2020. And now let's get to the show. All right, so I'm sitting here and I am talking to John Mulligan, or also known as Johnny Utah on the social. And Johnny, I'm just going to kind of go ahead and ask you to introduce yourself a little bit, and we're going to get rolling in this thing.
Awesome, man. Hey, thanks for having me. First off, John Mulligan is the birth name. Nickname I was given was Johnny Utah by my former business partner, the late Todd Prignitz. Whenever we co-owned Wicked together, I got that nickname and it stuck. But man, I'm a bow hunting nut like a lot of people out there in the world, and been through a lot of different career moves, and finally found one that stuck that allowed me to, pursue those passions full time in some way, shape, or form. So I live in Iowa now with 3 kids and a wife and a couple of dogs, and that's about it, man.
So, in your previous life, weren't you like law enforcement or bounty hunter or something at some point?
It felt like I was a bounty hunter. Yeah, for almost 16 years, just shy of 16 years, I was a police officer and undercover narcotics agent in the northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area.
Okay, no, thank you for your service doing that.
I had a different name in that career. I had a totally different name as well. So, man, it's hard to keep track. But, yeah.
No, that's cool. So then you went from that, and so currently you have, I mean, you say like a full-time career, but it's like multiple things rolled into one as far as I'm aware. I mean, probably 4 or 5 different businesses and a couple side hustles and a whole bunch of other things, just to kind of tie in your passion for hunting in every single one of them, it seems like. But can you kind of go into all of those for us a little bit?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up hunting. My dad wasn't a hunter. And when I grew up in central Kentucky, truth be known, that we didn't have whitetails. Like when I was a teenager, there wasn't any whitetails in central Kentucky. Western Kentucky, northern Kentucky, there was whitetails. So we fished. And, for a lot of people, if you don't have like an immediate family member or a brother to get you into it, how else are you going to get into it, right? So I didn't grow up hunting. It was after I moved away after college and I moved to northern Kentucky and I became a cop. One of my cop buddies, talked me into it and said, "Hey, we ought to do some deer hunting." And I said, I don't, I hate to admit this, but I don't know anything about hunting deers, And he said, he's like, "Dude, you're from Kentucky. Like, don't you guys just like kill stuff and eat it, roadkill style, But I'm like, yeah, some parts, I guess. But got into it. Fast forward a couple of years, I went to a trade show in Ohio, the Deer and Turkey Expo in Columbus, Ohio, that they have every year. And I came across Todd Prignitz, and he was peddling his White Knuckle Productions DVDs at the time. And we got to talking, and he said, "Hey, man," he said, "what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm a police officer, and I also have a landscape company that I own." And he says, "Well, I got a saw that might work for your landscaping stuff." And he pulls out this Wicked folding handsaw. And he said, "I'm just getting ready to, release these things." And so I checked it out and thought it was cool. So that was kind of the start that got everything going. Prior to that, another little sidebar, prior to that, I was designing equipment for a big landscape equipment manufacturer, actually a little miniature bobcat, like a little miniature skid steer that you stand on and operate instead of, seated position style. And I grew up with farm technology, farm equipment and through landscape equipment, grew up on tractors. I mean, dude, I was 7 years old. My parents would be in Bahamas on vacation and they'd leave me behind to mow the farm, and I'm like 7. So I can't sit in the seat. I had to stand up so that way I could reach the pedals.
Yeah.
But so I've always just kind of had a little, a knack for like equipment and how stuff goes and how that kind of works out. But became a dealer for Wicked Tree Gear and started selling saws. And within 3 months, I was the number one sales outlet for Wicked Tree Gear. And Todd, I remember he called me one day and he says, "Dude, I don't know what you're doing, but you sold more hand saws than Cabela's." And that's when I knew that maybe we had something there. I was already starting to look at what I was going to do post police career. And I had never thought about filming my hunts because when I went to go hunt, that's just what I went to go do. I went to get away from bad guys and I wanted to go sit in the tree and find my peace, reconnect with the world. And he said, "Why don't you take a camera into the woods and see if you can film yourself shooting a buck?" And the very first kill I had with white knuckle was a 159 in Kentucky on the ground with my bow, early season September, and I was hooked, man. Like I knew at that moment I wanted to share my hunts and I wanted to pursue hunting in some way. So go through a few years. I'm the co-owner. I had ended up buying part of Wicked Tree Gear. I'm the co-owner of Wicked. I'm the vice president of White Knuckle Productions, and I'm in charge of the sponsor relations end of the show. And Todd and I ended up selling Wicked, and with that came the opportunity that I could move to Iowa and still do what I was doing and run the marketing and product design side of Wicked for the new parent company. At that time, I felt creatively it was time for me to make a change from white knuckle. I was getting way more into photography and like a short film kind of a style, you know what I mean? And I also was looking at the trends of the hunting industry and I felt like the video side was starting to get played out. I wish I would have forecasted the damn podcast craze because I would have been it'd be John Rogan right now, you know what I mean? Johnny Utah Rogan, but I didn't see that one coming. But what I did see was photography was going to be content was going to be king. Instagram, um, you had some Snapchat stuff that was starting to come out because Snapchat actually came out like 5-6 years ago. It just didn't catch on at all, till the
Right.
last couple of years. But I started seeing all these different media outlets, and I started thinking, okay, you can't just post once a week. It's going to have to be once a day and over different platforms. And now you've got blogs and you've got IG stories. And I'm like, man, photography is where it's at. And I just dove into photography completely. That was the same time that I got hooked up with Sitka and became one of the ambassadors for Sitka. And that kind of just started spiraling things into it. Now, I still have the desire for the product side. I can't get out of the business side. Like that's something that's just ingrained into my DNA is the business side of the industry and I geek out over where things are going to go next. So I have Arrow Wild TV, which is a video format on Carbon TV and YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Also, it's a decent show, man. I mean, Carbon TV did give me the Best in Hunting Show award this year, so that was kind of rad. I'm very, very fortunate and blessed to get that. Um, I have Johnny Utah as an individual, and that's more of the my photography and kind of day to day life of what Johnny Utah page is the center of all of it, and then one cog off of that is the Arrow Wild video side of things. Another cog of that is the Johnny Utah Creative, which is strictly freelance photography and product design and marketing consulting for other companies in the industry. And then you have Bourbon Barrel Calls, which is my own product, turkey call, goose call business that I started right at a year ago. And then there is a new company that is just starting called Work More Hours, and which is me taking a motto that was given to me from my dad that I have based everything that I do in life all comes down to work more hours. I judge people on their work ethic. I don't take no for an answer. There's no shortcuts. There's just work. If you do the work, either A, you're going to have the satisfaction that you earned it, or B, you're going to get your goal. Either way, you're working towards your goal and you're not focused on the goal. You know what I mean? You're focused on the process. So, Work More Hours is a new brand that I'm launching, and it's not going to be just strictly for hunting. It's going to be for the gym, for lifestyle, for everything. Work is everything. And so that's just going to be a clothing line, lifestyle brand that I'm working on right now. And I keep telling my wife, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start this other business. And she's like, oh, yeah, with all the free time in the world that you have, go right ahead. So, but
I
yeah,
know
so
that.
yeah,
Dude, I know that. My wife
yeah,
tells me, she's like, I don't know why you volunteer for things. I don't know why you barely have time to do the things you want to do, and
right.
let alone all the family obligations. But
Uh,
the fact that you even think you have time to take on other tasks or projects, and I do it. I mean,
yep.
the best thing I think is when I'm under the gun, I perform the best as far as
Yes.
it just that's what brings out my focus, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I can see that. Like, because of being in a high stress job before, it's not that I really think that I perform better than other people under stress. I think that I just don't crack under stress. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So,
Oh yeah.
um, and unfortunately, the only way to achieve that status, to level up like that, to get that extended play, is you got to be super stressed a lot.
Yeah. No, I
But
get it.
yep, yep. So that's me in a nutshell, man. Like I said, you know, when I break down how I pay my bills, there's a portion of my bills that get paid from my photography. There's a portion of my bills that get paid from my marketing consulting. There's a portion of my bills that get paid from Bourbon Barrel. There's a portion that gets paid from Arrow Wild TV. And, whatever's left over at the end of the month, I mean, it goes back into hunting or more camera equipment.
Right. So
But
let's break some of that down a little bit, and let's
yeah,
kind of go into detail. So you got the bourbon barrel calls, and like you said, it's deer, and just recently became deer calls, and before that it was turkey. Still have
yep,
yet to order one. Been wanting to do it. Get the publicly challenged logo. We'll work
yeah,
on that. But
yeah.
in the meantime, let's kind of talk about that. How the heck did you come up with that, or you want to do that, or I mean, was it like, hey man, I know a guy that's got these barrels, and
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? I could probably do something with those. Where did that come from? I mean,
Yeah, so I was hunting in Kentucky. Every year I go back to Kentucky. There's an older fella, as I call him. There's an older gentleman that I always go hunt turkeys with back home, and I love this guy to death. And we were talking one night, and we were actually sipping a little bit of bourbon, and we were talking about turkey calls, and with the flavor, the aroma of bourbon on the mind. He said, "Man, I tell you," he goes, "there's one category that's completely saturated." I'm like, "Tell me about it." There's like 80 different companies that are making turkey calls, and that doesn't count all the hobbyists, the guys that are turning lathe calls, out of their garage, making one or two a month or something. And that conversation then went into talking and thinking with another buddy, and we were talking about building brands and what it takes to build a brand. And I said, you have to have a backstory. There's got to be an intimate connection to the brand. And if you have a good enough story, you don't have to have $1 million in marketing to make something go. And he said, do you think that you could build a brand from scratch in a saturated market? And I said, I think I could. And he goes, what about turkey calls? I'm like, you jerk. you know, I'm like, man, I was just talking about this with a buddy of mine that being, it's like that or trail cameras or tree stands. Like, I don't know how you can get more saturated, but I was like, you know what? I have an idea. So take bourbon barrels, and turkeys roost in oak trees. Bourbon barrels, legit bourbon. I'm kind of a bourbon snob.
right.
So if it ain't 51% corn, it ain't bourbon. So white oak is what is used to store bourbon. And I thought, man, there's a little bit of like a nexus right there with the white oak. And we all know that bourbon comes from Kentucky. So I thought, I grew up chasing turkeys in Kentucky. If I can get the integrity of the wood right, I can turn barrels, the lids, because they're thicker than the staves on the side. I can turn those into pots and make pot calls. Then the marketing side started to come in. I'm like, the soundboard, if I use a crystal striking surface, the soundboard can be the charred wood. So it's like a shadow box, like you're looking inside an empty barrel. Then I'm taking oak strikers and I'm stamping the wax logo on the butt of the striker, and it looks like the Maker's Mark bottles and
Right.
stuff like that. I'll put them in a wood box and I'll brand the logo on the front of the box the way a barrel head is stamped. Even the logo looks like the logo that would be on a barrel head. And I was like, you know what, this is going to work. So I partnered up with NWTF and an organization called the White Oak Initiative. And so $5 from every call that I sell gets donated back to NWTF via the White Oak Initiative. With the deforestation that's going on with white oaks and like furniture building and things like that, we're losing our white oak trees. They're not replenishing. So to get a mature white oak, it's not something you plant and you've got acorns next week, So there's the organization out of Kentucky called the White Oak Initiative, and they're basically they're doing a lot of partnerships in Kentucky. I shouldn't say they're out of Kentucky. What they're doing is they're doing a lot of reforestation of white oaks. So it's my way of having a company that gives back. It has roots to it. It has a backstory of taking reclaimed white oak trees. I'm not cutting down new trees to make this product. And it just kind of comes full circle, and it ties back into my roots of Kentucky and bourbon. We launched the company, or I launched the company, and in 1 year, we sold about 650 calls, sell almost 700 calls, and they're in the Shields sporting goods stores.
That's pretty cool. I like Shields too. It's
Yeah.
nice, customer or the actual employee owned business. It's a nice
Yeah.
business model. Everything about it. Yeah. It's a good store. So that was just kind of all by coincidence then. It wasn't like, oh yeah, really, it was more like a challenge and you're like, challenge
Yeah.
accepted. Let's do it. Let's make it
Yeah.
happen. That's
Yeah.
pretty
And
cool.
and I tell you, I do a lot of that in my life, whether it's by design or I just tell myself it's a challenge. And that's kind of how I get myself psyched up for it. It's like if somebody says you can't do something, um, if a buddy says, I don't think you can pull that off, but you might be able to. I'm like, no, no, no. Tell me I can't do it. You know? So no, man, it's a lot of fun. And to me, it also keeps me fresh. It keeps my finger on the pulse. And I use bourbon barrel calls as kind of a petri dish. I will try different things marketing wise and see what clicks. If it clicks, then I can then take those techniques and then I don't want to say sell those to my marketing clients, but if I know it works on my stuff, then I know it'll work on their stuff.
So when you say
Um,
marketing clients, you mean like actual marketing business, or is that part of like the photography is the marketing business?
no, so Johnny Utah Creative is split between freelance photography and marketing consultation. So I have marketing clients that I advise them on their marketing efforts, whether it be what they need to be posting or what partnerships they need to do, or hey, I think you should partner with this show and we're going to give this show X amount of dollars or whatever. So I kind of advise them not on their day-to-day marketing, but kind of like monthly. You
I
know what
got
I
you.
mean?
Like a
We'll
longer
have
term
meetings.
scope.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have meetings, or if they've got a new product they want to launch, then I'll help them with their photo shoots and kind of how to do their rollout so they get the most bang for their buck. And I've always said an idea is just an idea, and you could have the coolest product in the world, but it's useless and worthless if nobody buys it. So
That's true.
yep. So it's just making sure that the message rings home, and in today's consumer is much more educated, and a lot more people in the hunting space are more passion driven. That's why you see brands like Sitka, for example. They don't sell you so much on the tech every once in a while you'll see some post about the tech of their clothing, but it's more about what is the passion. They sell you on the passion of their product.
See, and a guy like you, it surprises me that you're not a four low kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
are you familiar with it now? Because do you
Yeah.
know of it or yeah? So
Uh, no.
high quality technical apparel made
Yep.
right here, 100% in the United States.
Yep.
Um, a blue collar, working guy worked his way up, built his own
Uh-huh.
company, and then said, "Hey, I'm using all these clothes. They're made in China. You're paying a premium for them. I think I could do it here using
Yeah.
American ingenuity and build hunting clothes." I'm sure
Yep.
you probably have brand affiliations and whatnot with Sitka and
Yeah.
obligations and whatnot, but I'm just saying, Johnny,
Yeah.
blue collar, hardworking American guy like yourself, not wearing
Yeah.
American made clothes. You might have to.
Yeah. No, I know. And it's funny because a lot of the brands that I work with, I do choose them on USA. Kafaru and Grizzly coolers and stuff like
Right.
that. I do choose a lot of things on the USA, made. Um, I tell you, man, I'm a self-proclaimed sissy when it comes to being cold in the winter. And as soon as I switched over to Sitka, I'm like, man, I'm actually warm.
Yeah,
So,
no, they've definitely got quite a few more SKUs, but I will say, talk to the owner Andy. I do know that they have over 64,000 or something SKUs in the works. So I mean
oh,
that's a
nice.
lot of stuff. Plus you got to
Yeah,
figure
sure.
he's got the chief product designer from QU that is
Uh-huh.
now working for him. So
Oh, very cool.
I mean there's a lot going on there. I think I'm really excited to see. I think depending on how the new administration and everybody handles China and different tariffs and things like that, it may
Yeah,
drastically affect that company.
sure.
But I think as of right now, with the current tax climate and everything, it's definitely starting to have its advantages to have production here in the United States for sure.
Yeah.
But
Isn't it
so
so weird when you think about hunting space, like how much it can be affected by foreign governments and tariffs and policies and that kind of stuff. It's because when you think of a lot of times that's the argument of hunting. Like I can just go outside in the woods, hunt some public land, like right on my soil.
yep.
But it's gotten big. I mean, hunting has grown up, and there's so
So
many more companies involved.
I mean, what is it, like a 200 and something $1 million business, or is it billion? I think it's
I
million, right?
uh, no, it's got to be more than that.
So it's
Has to
more
be.
like more than 250. Oh yeah, it's big.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a
yeah,
$200 billion industry a year.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean
It's
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 huge.
huge. Yeah, it's huge and small at the same time. Like um, before I was working, within the industry, I would always look at it and say, "Oh my gosh, the hunting industry is so huge, man." And then now that like I'm in it, everybody knows everybody, and it's actually really small. So it's kind of funny, and there's nowhere near as much money in it as what I thought there was. Like, I guess I mean I was naive, and I would look at guys like Lakoski and Waddell and stuff like that. I'm like, those guys are probably making like $10 million a year.
No, but on top of that, man, you got to sell your soul too.
That's right.
No
Well,
offense to Lee and Tiffany
hey,
or any of those guys, but I mean, when
no,
when
you're
you're
right.
in your stand and you're not self filming and you got a camera guy and you've got all these obligations and you got to get so many logo shots within a 10-minute frame or a 20-minute frame and all that
Right.
other stuff. And the other thing I think is that the consumers see that and they get sick of it.
They do.
Just like even on social media, there becomes a point to where it's like it becomes an advertisement tool to the point to where everybody's doing everything and it's just advertising, or they're giving free advertisement to people by hashtagging it and stuff. And
Yeah,
and I do believe that people catch on to that, and it kind of turns them off at some point. And that's why I
for
think
sure.
like the hunting public did so well for quite some time, because it was something new. It was an idea that was
Yep.
definitely fresh.
And that's what happens too. Like when I was a marketing director with Tecumani Holdings, I used to look at the Nielsen ratings every month, and I would look at TV viewership of all the shows on all the networks. And this will probably upset a lot of TV show people if they're listening and they're like, "Damn you, John! every year you watched, and every month you watch TV viewership drop and drop and drop. So let's just, sake of easy numbers, let's say I've got 10 million people that tuned into my show, and they saw me wearing, hypothetically, let's say I'm on television and they see me wearing a pair of crispy boots. Okay, 10 million eyeballs saw me wearing crispy. Well, fast forward a bunch of years, and people are not watching television like they did before, and maybe only 500,000 people tuned in for that week's episode. Now, Crispy's going, hey, dude, for me to get the same impact and the same results, I need you to splash my logo like 8 or 9 times throughout the episode. There's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You watch television now, and it's just like you're watching one infomercial, up, deer walking across the field, infomercial, deer get shot, infomercial, closure. And you're like, wow, that was cool. And because a show was not my sole source of income, I always tried to keep my show. Yes, we all got bills to pay, and we all have affiliations, and we gotta make make money. But I've always tried to keep my show and myself as authentic as I possibly can. Like, I have a no recreation policy when I'm filming. If I didn't get it on film, we just didn't get it on film. I also, this year, whitetail season, I self filmed all but I think 4 days out of like 67 sits or whatever. So now I do have camera guys on a lot of my hunts, but if I'm in a tree stand or in a blind, I'm like, I can self film it. I don't like it because the footage is never it doesn't fit my cinematic feel, but it's cheaper. It's a
It's
lot cheaper.
authentic. It's authentic though.
Yeah, it is. And so that's kind of been my thing. I mean, I always hate when somebody says, damn it, I'm humble, or damn it, I'm authentic, because usually it means they're not. But I really try to be as authentic as I possibly can. If I miss a deer, I'll tell everybody I missed a deer. If I wounded a deer, I wounded it, man. I suck. Try
Yeah,
again tomorrow.
I hear you
It
on that for
happens.
sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing. I think people end up seeing through, different shows or different aspects of hunting and the industry and who's doing what and all those things. Eventually, you catch on and you can tell who's real and who's not.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
let's talk now that we're talking about hunting and we're kind of
Yeah.
on that. Let's talk about your hunts this year, man. You what was it, Colorado or Idaho? You went. It started out elk hunting, right? Or before that, I think it was even South Dakota, right? Something like that.
Yeah. 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 So I started out in Florida back in March, and I shot an Osceola with my bow down in Florida. And then I went to Texas and shot a Rio with my bow. Then I ended up in the Black Hills National Forest, and I shot my Miriams with my bow. And then on my way back to Iowa, I was talking to a buddy on the phone, and I said, man, I'm just going to crash on your couch. Like, I'm done. I'm spent. I can't drive anymore. So I crashed on his couch, and he's like, we can wake up in like 3 hours and we can go ahead and wrap up this single season Grand Slam right here in Iowa. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So woke up in the morning and I shot my Eastern with my bow that morning. So I pulled off a single season archery Grand Slam this year. That was pretty awesome during COVID, the COVID Slam. Then I ended up in Montana, antelope. Shot another archery antelope there. I love Montana, man. I love that state as a whole. I then went to Kentucky and actually hunted with an outfitter in Kentucky. I do some photo work for this outfitter, and they were like, well, hell, if you're going to be here doing photos, you might as well bring your bow and bring a camera guy and, see if you can get on one of our whitetails. I hunted my ass off. I saw one deer. It was like 110 inches, and I wasn't going to shoot it. So I had my first little bit of tag soup of the year. Went to Idaho, hunted my ass off. I'm a total greenhorn when it comes to elk hunting. I had no idea what I was doing. Was just running around, probably scared more elk than I should have. But finally, on the last couple of days, I finally got into some elk, and man, I came damn close. I got to like 15 yards on a big 300, 320-inch bull, and he was in the chokeberries. And I mean, I'm getting ready to draw, and I'm looking for a hole, and I'm like, come on, come on, come on, and I'm like, I got nothing. And I'm like, man, if I release an arrow in this stuff, I'm gonna have like 18 deflections for every 10 feet, you know. So I decided not to even, take a chance and trying to pull that off. So, but I learned a ton. I mean, I was pissed at the moment, at the time. I was beating myself up because I could visualize it. I saw the finish line, you know what I mean? I really felt like I was going to go out there and I was going to shoot an elk my first time out on an over the counter unit. Um, but I
So
came up short.
so were you? I mean, were you going solo, or were you with buddies out there? And that was
No,
your first time ever elk hunting,
yeah,
then?
yeah. I had a camera guy who was also an experienced caller. So I did have that going for me. I had somebody that had some elk experience, and so he was out there and he was able to kind of help out and advise me about some stuff. But for the most part, it's just covering miles and trying to get on them. Now I think in the closure, that's where I was very, very green, and that just takes time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether you've got one at 100 yards, or you got one at 60 yards, how are you going to close that final distance? And I knew I was running out of time, and maybe I could have let that bull bed up for the day, and then maybe tried to play the wind a little better. There's a lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda that I've been thinking about nonstop since September. But I got a little rammy, and we kind of pressed on a little bit. And unfortunately, we pressed on so aggressive that we allowed ourselves to be in a shit spot, and where I didn't have I mean, I was 15 yards away and I had no shot. But if I would have waited, I could have either gone up and around the chokeberries or below the chokeberries. And then at least I could have, if I would have had him at 40 yards, I would have at least had a window to shoot in these pines. But I didn't have it. Like I said, I kind of forced the issue a little bit. And that's not having the proper patience.
That's
You listen to a lot of elk podcasts and they say there's a go time and there's a wait time.
Brian
And
Barney said it. I think he said it the best. He says, "You're going to coyote them, and you're going to be aggressive and be
yep,
aggressive and aggressive until it's time to not be aggressive and wait." And
yep,
that's it. And he goes, "That's
yep,
how you make the deal." But
yep.
yeah,
And I just didn't know, you know what I mean? That's where I was very inexperienced. But I took so much away from that hunt, that I feel like if somebody would have tried to teach me things before the hunt, it's kind of like if somebody tried to teach you the dictionary, but you hadn't learned the alphabet yet.
yeah, yeah.
Now I know the alphabet, so now I feel like I can read the dictionary. You know what I mean?
Oh
Now
yeah.
I feel like I can build on it. So now I've been listening to elk podcast, and I've been texting, messaging Corey Jacobson and Donnie Drake, and those guys. And I'm actually going to sit down and do the elk 101 classes. And I know that there's valuable information that I'm going to pick up from that because Corey's the man, when it comes to bulls. So
Dude, there's so many good guys and Corey and
yep.
all of them, man. And you can learn so much. I mean, that's like kind of you talking about the same thing. My first elk hunt, same scenario, went in blind, didn't know it. I didn't even get on elk, but that was just because of my own stupid, decisions along the way and not preparing myself. And then you just learn, you almost have to have that failure in order to
Mm-hmm.
motivate yourself to teach yourself these other things. And so like
Yep.
2021, man, this is going to be my elk year. I got some plans. I probably won't draw the tags I want, and it'll end up
Uh-huh.
being over the counter, but I've got
Yeah.
hopes for it. I've got hopes, and I've
Hell yeah.
spent 2 years learning, and
Yeah.
through this podcast, talking to guests and educating myself through online resources, I feel pretty confident. So
Uh-huh. That's awesome, man. Well, I came back from the elk hunt, and then it was time to switch over to whitetails, and started hunting Iowa whitetails. I had a buck picked out this year. That was my hit list buck, a buck I called him Tyson, and I was chasing him around and probably bumping him more than I should have. So I took a little break, went out to Kansas to go hunt out there with a buddy. And we had already had our date kind of set in stone when I was going to come out there. And I started looking at the forecast, and we had a huge cold front come through the Midwest, during that last week of October. And I'm like, oh, like if there's one thing I love better than the rut, it's a cold front at the end of October. And we had like 5 days of it, and I'm like, oh my God, the whole time I was in Kansas, I was like, I was wanting to be back home. And then that's actually when I got the call from my mom that my dad was sick. And we had no idea. We just thought he had like a chest cold, take a Z pack, and he was going to be fine. And he comes out of the doctor with stage 4 cancer.
Yikes.
And so my head wasn't in it anymore. You know what I mean? And I thought, man, I got to leave Kansas. I got to at least get back to Iowa. That puts me closer to Kentucky if I need to make some emergency trips. My mom's like, just stay where you're at. We've got a lot of tests to do the next few days. So I'm hunting like crazy, hunting like crazy, hunting like crazy. I end up shooting my buck on the fourth encounter. I shoot him at 37 yards, and I'm thinking he's going to duck. I know in my heart he's going to duck. So I aim low, and he doesn't duck. And he makes a full recovery, shows back up on camera 2 weeks later. I have another encounter with him right before our bow season lets out, but he's at 89 yards. And I'm like, man, this deer is such a homebody. He's not going anywhere. I'll kill him late season. Just let him survive shotgun season. As long as nobody trespasses on my lease, I'm good. I leave to go on a photo shoot. I have some super fans that follow everything I post, and they recognize terrain features and trees of my lease. Also knew I was in Oklahoma, went to my landowner. We're like, hey, can we go shotgun drive that property? And he said, man, I lease it to somebody else. Yeah, but he's a bow hunter only, and he's in Oklahoma, so we won't be messing with any of his stuff. And the landowner's like, well, yeah, I guess it'll be okay. They went out there with an army of dudes and flushed out the timber where I told them exactly where the buck was bedded. Flushed him out. They shot him 20 something times and finally put him down. So that was like, I'm like, man, there's 2020 right there, After that, I'm like, well, my season's over, I'm like, man, what an exclamation point on 2020, right? And I'm like, these little punks just went onto my property and, you know what I mean? Snookered their way in on my lease that I pay for and shot my buck. I thought, this sucks. Then 2020 says, hold my beer. I got one more for you. My dad dies December 16th. And I'm like, wow, now that's the exclamation point on 2020 being a shit year. So we've got visitations and funerals, and I'm back in Kentucky, back and forth, helping my mom do stuff. And I get back to Iowa. We go through Christmas, and I tell my wife, I'm like, I'm sorry. I know this probably isn't the most ideal time, but I just need to vanish for a few days. I went back to Kansas, shot a buck out there, came home, and that's how I ended 2020. So it wasn't the most ideal year by any means, but if work more hours has legs, that was it. You can be beat down physically, mentally, emotionally. And I kept trying to put myself in a good position to capitalize, and kept chasing goals. I mean, there was a lot of times this year I'm like, I wanted to just empty the truck and, I don't know, maybe have a career change or something. You know what I mean? Because I was ready to give up. There was a lot of times I was ready to give up, but there were times this year that I made stupid decisions. And then there were also times that there were things out of my control. But because there was so many of them, it just really started to take a toll on me, and it made my mistakes seem so much more monumental, and so I was really beating myself up. And then, of course, like I said, losing my father, who my dad is who shaped me who I am, he's the one that said to me, work more hours, and that's a motto that I take from him. So Yeah, it was a rough year, man. But like I said, at the end of the day, you always got a little fight left in you. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
So, and it makes you realize that you still have some fight in you if you keep going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thing is, people are hoping 2021 is going to be better, but I highly doubt.
I know.
Not to crap on your parade or anything, but
Yeah.
I mean, dude, 2021, everybody's telling it they just want it to bleed and die and it's over and everything else. But 2021, I don't foresee the future being any better. In fact, look forward to it being worse and knowing you're going to come out of it hopefully tougher. That's about the only thing you can take from it for sure.
Yeah.
And I just
Yep.
want to say one more thing, Johnny.
Yep.
You freaking suck with the COVID slam with the turkeys because I got robbed in the
Oh no.
stupid state of Illinois from my turkey tag.
Oh no.
COVID land lockdowns. So public ground, right? Publicly challenged, mostly hunt public land with very, very
Yep.
little private. And I drew a turkey tag that I've been wanting for a couple years and never got to hunt it. Will I
Oh,
get to hunt it
dude.
this year? No, I won't. Did I get a refund? Yes. Do I
Okay.
care about my $15?
No,
No.
right,
I
right.
wanted to hunt that damn turkey. I did
Well,
scouting. I found a couple awesome thunder chickens ready to go. They were puffing and just spitting at me, and I called them in and did a little bit of scouting and everything. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. I'm gonna kill these turkeys. And then it was like week before, shut them down. I was so pissed. You have no
uh,
idea. So
yeah.
just hearing you talk, oh yeah, I went back to Iowa and just
Yeah.
rounded it out. That sucks, dude. That sucks so
Well,
bad.
and I mean, for me, like I was gonna go to Kentucky because I go to Kentucky every year to chase easterns with my buddy Johnny Parker, and they did a non-resident restriction. And then I was gonna go to Nebraska to try to do the Rio
Yeah.
Miriam thing, and then they shut down non-residents. Now, if you talk to the turkey purist, they will say that there's no such thing as real Miriams and Rios in Nebraska.
Yeah,
They're
you got
all
to go to
hybrids.
Arizona. Yeah.
Yep. So they're like, it's all hybrids. And I'm like, well, it looks like a Miriam and it looks like a Rio. I'm like, are we doing DNA test here or what? But so in a way, with Nebraska not letting me in, I was kind of glad because then no one can say I shot a hybrid. You know what I
Right.
mean? They were legitimate Rios and Miriams. So and to have one of the birds be on public land, something like the Black Hills National Forest, like that was pretty kick ass. I hunt some public. I definitely hunt more private now than I do public. It used to be like 70-30. Now it's probably 30-70.
Yeah.
But you know, I like the land management aspect. My degree's in horticulture, so I love doing food plots. I love doing manipulation and timber stand improvements and things like that. And I kind of geek out over that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that you can't pattern a buck and have multiple encounters with him over the years on public. It happens all the time. Those people are probably just way more skilled than I am. So I like the private land aspect, but moving to Iowa, being a non-native, I guess before I always looked at Iowa as one of those states where it was like Pleasantville. You know, as soon as you move there, people bump into you and they go, "Oh, sorry, how are you doing today, buddy? Oh, my lands, good heavens!" Uh, no, you're a non-native, man. They don't like you here.
That's
It's not
interesting.
it's not been good. And who likes the guy with tattoos, long hair, and former cop? Like everybody hates me here. So, and I'm trying to exploit their whitetails. So it's been rough, man. I'll be honest. It's been really rough. It's hard to find ground. If you do find ground, they don't stick to the agreements and they let everybody else go on it, even though you pay for it.
That
Um,
sucks.
yeah. So yeah, I mean it's I mean I guess at the end of the day the message is I guess I should have worked harder in life and been able to buy ground or something. So I'm like,
Maybe.
damn it, I'm a loser.
Or
So
you just chase that public and figure it out. I haven't figured it out, but that's what I love about it. I don't know. It's different, man.
yeah,
It's different for sure.
we've got huge tracts of public. We really do. Um The first year I moved here, I picked up a lease that I didn't think that the lease was very good, but it gave me backdoor access to a big chunk of public that the only way anybody was going to get there was they're going to have to walk like 2.5 miles. And I'm like, man, a lot of people aren't willing to do that, especially in Iowa when there's just so much private around and so many people have access to ag fields. Like nobody's going to want to hunt deep timber. Uh, but
It's funny that we call that deep timber for a whitetail hunter. You know what I mean? Like a
I know,
whitetail hunter,
yeah,
but a person out west is like 2.5 miles. That's nothing. That's
I
like
know, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
you
just
got
where
to
we
go
walk.
minimum of 2.5 miles just to get away from half the people. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. You go 2.5 miles just to get to the glassing knob, and
right?
then figure out where you want to drop in.
Absolutely.
Uh, yeah, so it's no, it is kind of funny. I don't know. I mean, I've got my eyes open right now for a couple of new leases, and our season lets out on the 10th. And once it lets out, then I'm going to get real aggressive and see if I can pick up a couple of new pieces. And I mean, Real World Wildlife Products is a sponsor of the show. Swisher Products, they make the rough cut mowers, pull behind mowers. They're a sponsor of the show. I'm like, I'd say the state might frown upon if I'm out there cutting down stuff and planting
Yeah.
spots. So, and
Yeah.
grizzly box blinds. Like, I don't think the DNR is going to let me throw up a big box blind in the middle of
They
public.
could.
So
I mean, technically, if they allow you to put a stand up, nothing says you can't put it up out there. You just got to figure a way to get it out there.
right, right, yeah. So I'm like, oh man. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is
Yeah.
there's companies and brands that I work with, and I need some of that. Like I said, I do enjoy the land management aspect. I love the challenge of public, and I love what public land represents. That anybody can go out there. It's ripe for the taking if you're willing to put in the work and figure it out. And it usually is some of the hardest ground in the world to figure out. Um, and I do like that challenge of it as well. So
I, I
I go,
find it interesting though. It's not so much even the animals; it's figuring out what the animals are doing in reaction to the people. It's
uh-huh.
and the crap you see. I mean, or you think you're going to be the only one out there, and then all of a sudden, it's 2 hours after sunrise, and here comes some guy in blaze orange and a freaking bright white bow with pink arrows just walking
Yeah,
past you, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
yeah,
It
man. I
just
tell you, when I had a spot that I found on our public, and it was dynamite. I mean, it kind of tucked in an inside corner of a private ag field, and I'm like, man, this is a money spot. This is money. I mean, I'm 100 yards into public, but the way this ridge follows is they're going to funnel off of that ag field, and they're coming right into bedding, and they're going to be in my lap. And it was dynamite. And then I checked my trail cameras, and I got all these squirrel hunters and rabbit hunters walking around with their 22s, and I'm like, balls,
it
I'm
still could
like,
be
you got to be
good.
kidding me.
You never know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, man, but no, and in all honesty, I hear people complain about public land. I had a tree stand stolen or trail camera stolen. The only crap I've ever had stolen has been on private. So,
That sucks
you
too.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, man, you want to tell everybody once again before we go where they can find you? It's been great talking to you, and I just want
yeah,
everybody to be able to find you on all avenues and channels and your TV show and all that stuff, man.
yeah. So, me directly, it's johnny.utah.hunt on Instagram, and there's a Johnny Utah Hunt official on Facebook. Arrowwild has Arrowwild TV, Instagram, Facebook, and you can subscribe to YouTube or Carbon TV. And Bourbon Barrel Calls on Instagram and Facebook. You can check out the website bourbonbarrelgamecalls.com. That's me in a nutshell.
So, did you use a bourbon barrel call on all your turkey hunts this year for the COVID slam?
I did actually. I used that. I mean, 'cause I had like 42 days, chasing turkeys between driving and hunting. But hold on one sec. That was what I used to prototype new calls. So before the slate call was released, I used the slate on the Rio, I use the crystal on the Osceola. Sorry. Um, I use the copper. Um, yeah, copper was Miriam's, and then crystal on Eastern.
So, did you? Because you make like an etched aluminum one too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
That
then
one that I came out, that was kind of the last one that I released. And um, my personal favorites are the aluminum striking surface and the crystal striking surface.
so with the aluminum striking surface, is that the only one that you can get etched with like your custom logo or design or name or whatever you want on it, or how's that work? Are you still doing that?
Yeah, still doing that. On the custom engraved aluminum, that would be the soundboard that gets etched. So it's a crystal striking surface over top of that
Oh,
soundboard.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep.
because I thought in your initial aluminum ones or something, it was like you had to scratch the surface and it actually took the finish of the whatever you had etched into it. Maybe I was
Oh,
wrong, and you're just scratching the surface of the crystal, and
correct.
it's making it foggy to where you can't see the design.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, that
Yep.
makes sense. All right, man,
Yep.
Johnny, it's been great talking to you, and glad to have you on and finally actually talk and catch up.
Yeah. Hell yeah,
Um,
man.
Thank you for coming on, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.